Everyone has joined, I guess.
Hi.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi. This is Gopi here. Sachi.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Divakar.
Yeah, yeah, ma'am. Right.
Yes,
Good
yes.
morning. Good morning, sir.
Good.
गुड मॉर्निंग, कैन यू हियर मी?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Hello, Amman.
क्या हाल है अमन भाई, बहुत दिनों के बाद?
जी साचिदा. So nice to see you again.
यस, सो नाइस टू सी यू.
वाह.
वंडरफुल. घर में सब ठीक ठाक हैं?
जी बिल्कुल.
सबको मेरा जोहार बोलना.
जी जी.
Good morning, sir.
गुड
I
मॉर्निंग.
believe we have our
This is Nikita. Yeah.
good morning. Good morning. We'll just start the session. Just please give us 5 minutes. I'm
निकिता,
yet to be made the admin, and within 5-10 minutes, we'll start with the session.
निकिता, हेलो.
I hope I
Nikita.
was audible.
Yes,
दिस
sir.
Nikita.
इज निकिता. आई हैव सेंट अनदर इमेज टू यू दिस मॉर्निंग.
Nikita, can you hear?
Hanji, now.
Nikita, I have sent you an image this morning. Can you also put that on the screen when I ask for it?
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you so much. क्या हाल है मीना?
कैसे हो sir? Good morning. How are you?
गुड गुड गुड.
Hello, Aman sir. How are you?
Hello, Meena. Thanks,
And
I'm
welcome.
fine.
And thanks for taking out time to be a part of Equinox, both of you. Thank you so much.
Always welcome.
We're actually waiting for the chairperson to join. Rashi's had bit of a power cut situation back at her place. So the moment she joins, I'll start with the session.
Yeah, Rashi had just called me. She's just to join कर रही थी. I think बिजली चली गई उसकी. ओहो. Nikita, are you in touch with Rashi? Or should I call her also?
Hanji ma'am, I'm in touch with her. She told me that she would be joining. So I think maybe we just wait for 5 minutes. It should be resolvable.
नहीं नहीं वो फोन से कर ली. Rashi is actually joining from Shillong.
Hanji. But
He's
power cut
also,
तो दिल्ली में भी बहुत हुए. In fact, that was one of my
Savyasaachi also, he's also saying.
major concern that
Yeah.
it shouldn't have a power cut. Students are very, very interested in this session. So I'm very happy that I basically didn't have to ask them to join the session. They on their own reached out to me and they asked me if I could, speak to the other teachers and have the classes adjusted because they were so keen to be part of the session.
Yeah.
That's very encouraging, Rashi.
एक्चुअली आजकल फोर्थ ईयर के डिसर्टेशन का चल रहा है बहुत कुछ. तो अ लॉट ऑफ देम आर इंटरेस्टेड इन एआई जो हमारे पास सोशियोलॉजी में आए हैं. There are a lot of them relating to AI and education, AI and social media. So I think they will be very interested in this. कह रहे थे कि they want to listen to it. I'll just talk to Rashi. I don't know, can you hear me?
Good morning, Savyasaachi sir, Madan sir.
Hello, Protiti, how are you?
I'm good,
Hello, good
sir. How are
morning.
you? All good? We got a
So,
fright yesterday when Gopi ma'am said that you might not be able to join.
well, I thought I wouldn't, but I think things turned out that I have joined. My
That's
back
lucky
was
for us.
giving me a lot of trouble.
I came to know, yeah.
तो उसको हमने धीरे धीरे संभाल लिया. So 1 घंटा तो मैं बैठ ही सकता हूँ कम से कम.
Right. I think, Nikita, we can start because it's 10:05 and,
Ma'am,
we'll run into the next session then.
हाँ जी मैम बस राशि is just joining in 2 minutes. उसके क्या पार कट हो गया. So this was
There
my
नहीं,
she is.
नहीं, मैं
She's
सुन रही
here,
थी. I
she's
have joined, but not in my name. So I was hearing the conversation, but I thought maybe she can.
She is joined,
Pragati, she's
Protiti.
already here. So
Hi,
Okay.
I'm so sorry. There was a power cut
Hi,
and it's
Rashi.
raining really
Hello,
heavily
Rashi.
here. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, yes. I'm all set. We can start, please. Apologies for the delay.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
And I think I have to do the mirror image of the poster session. I'll just take care of that. But I'll not take more time. A big welcome to our esteemed, very distinguished speakers who joined before time, before any of the participants. So thank you so much to both of you for taking the time out to be part of our first online technical session for Equinox 2025. A very warm welcome from my side. I'm Nikita Oditya, and my co-host Dr. Divakar Singh. He's the other session moderator for today. We also have with us Dr. Rashi Bhargava as chairperson. And it's really nice to basically have her back in Metri. So for all the student participants basically who have joined us here, Dr. Rashi Bhargava taught at Metri College, and she was herself actually very instrumental in starting the very first session of Equinox. So great to have you here. We also have with us conveners of Equinox 2025. We have Dr. Gopi, Dr. Brotati, Professor Meena Yadav with us. Thank you so much to all of you for being present. And none of this would have been possible without their vision and guidance. It's quite a task to manage this on an online, a hybrid mode. So thank you so much. I'll start the session with a brief introduction of Dr. Rashi, and then Rashi, you will be taking over the session basically from there. Professor Rashi Bhargava is currently teaching sociology at Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, an alumna of Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has taught at Christ University, Bangalore, as well as several colleges of the University of Delhi, including, as I just mentioned, our very own Metri College. Her research spans humor studies, gender, politics and culture in Northeast India, and visual culture, and she has co-edited several acclaimed volumes, including Politics of Recognition and Representation in Indian Stand-Up Comedy and Punching Up in Stand-Up Comedy. It is a privilege to have you again with us, Rashi, and we look forward to the session. I'll just switch off my mic.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikita. That was a very generous introduction. And yes, I'm not new to the events in Metri and Metri College in general. A very good morning to all the conveners of Equinox. I've met all of them. The presenters, I don't know if Professor Amman would remember, but we have met at Christ University for one of your sessions there as well.
Yes, I remember.
Professor Savyasaachi, I think with you, I've had like multiple meetings, encounters, interactions, discussions. So what I'll do is, I think on record, I want to just say I'm really humbled by the invitation, because to chair this session is definitely one of the most difficult things I've done in the recent past. It's like a Herculean task to sort of bring together the points that the two speakers are going to bring today, because my understanding from the abstracts that I read, there will be a lot of thought-provoking themes and issues that will come out of their presentations. Both of them extremely acclaimed in their field of sociology, have contributed immensely to the field. So and since I've heard them previously at different occasions, I assure the audience here, all the students including, that please keep your eyes, ears, everything open here, because you will be having quite a sensory experience. And don't look for all the answers, because both the speakers, as I said from my past experience, will raise more questions and will stick to the true spirit of sociology by telling you that you need to inculcate a certain kind of attitude towards understanding the world around you. So on that note, I think what after reading the abstracts, there were few things that came to my mind. I think both the speakers, despite different context, will be deliberating on issues of reflexivity, the questions of how exactly do we look at creative knowledge, collaborative knowledge, participatory and emancipatory knowledge. How do we really understand the power of imagination and creation and co-creation? So on that note, let's begin the presentations. I was told by the organizers there are a few guidelines. The session is 1 hour 20 minutes, so 30 minutes for each presentation, followed by 10 minutes of interaction. So I would ask Professor Savyasaachi and Professor Amman, would you like to take the questions together at the end, or would you want questions immediately after your presentation?
Whichever way.
Sorry, sir?
Whichever is convenient. Whichever is good for discussion.
I think let's then take one presentation, 10 minutes of interaction, and then move on to the second presentation, so that the thoughts and the themes are still fresh in everybody's mind.
Yeah, that would be better.
Yeah. The second point is the default setting of this meeting is the audience members cannot unmute themselves. So please type your questions, your comments, any of the thoughts that you have in the chat box, and I'll take it up as soon as the presentations are over. If it's okay, should I give you a reminder 5 minutes before your time or 10 minutes before? 5? Okay, so I'll keep my timer on. We'll start with Professor Savyasaachi. So the topic, the abstract that I got, the topic was a little different from what was there in the schedule. So I'll go by the abstract title. So the title of his presentation is The Limits of Imagination, Mechanization of Social Life, and the Deforestation of the Mind. Professor Savyasaachi is an independent researcher and a professor formerly with the Department of Sociology, Jamia Millia Islamia, where he taught for almost 3 decades. He has been a visiting faculty at the School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi, the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad and Bangalore, and NIRMA University, Ahmedabad. He has served on the Senate of NIT Ahmedabad and is actively engaged with several organizations, including Bhumika Creative Dance Center, Griha, Sahriti Development Practices, and Investigating Design, working at the intersections of development, design, and sustainable practices. After knowing him for so many years, I think this is a very, very small part of what he's done and what he's doing. But since this is the formal introduction that came to me, I'll stick to that. So on this note, over to you, sir. We'll start your presentation and I'll start the time.
Thank you very much, Rashi, for this very kind and generous introduction. I hope I'm audible. Okay.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. And thank you, Maitri College, for inviting me yet another year to share my loud thinking on subjects that I'm researching at the moment. So what I'm going to present today is work in progress. I've been thinking about this for very long, and I've got the opportunity to finally pen down my thoughts in some structured presentation, and I hope I'm able to communicate what I want to say. Rashi introduced me as somebody who works with architects more than sociologists, which is true. But at the same time, I wear a different hat when I'm talking about the forest, because that has been my primary work for many years. And I need to say this before, because my argument regarding mechanization of social life and deforestation of the mind is based on observing people who move out of the forest to become part of the mainstream. That is the ethnography that I'm drawing upon. And I see that a very important and the most singular feature of this phenomena is a dramatic change in the relationship between human beings and nature. And this singular change I define as the deforestation of the mind. Dwelling in forest landscapes, and this is a point that everybody needs to be attentive to. Dwelling in forest landscapes shows that every effort that human beings make to produce goods and services and thoughts for the use in everyday life has 2 components. The first component is the investment of labor, and the second component is the work of nature. In other words, we take raw material from the forest, process them, and then use them for ourselves. Now, the important point to note here is that in every product, the ratio is to the extent of 1% of human labor and 90% of the work of nature. This is a very important point to note. And everything in your thoughts, in your products, in your services, because what you do is you actually work along the grain of what the forest landscape provides you. Now here, I have to emphasize that nature here means a forest landscape and not nature as we know of it in the laboratory, as atoms of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and what are the periodic elements and the processes that we learn from the physical sciences. This is very important to note. Now, as you move out of the forest, this ratio changes, right? And what happens is the investment of human labor increases to replace the work of nature. A total integration into the mainstream occurs when all work of nature has been replaced. A very good example would be manufactured seeds. A seed cannot reproduce itself. It has to be bought in the market. Now, this is a proof of the fact that the work of nature here would be that the seed has the capacity to reproduce itself each time it's sown. And that capacity is lost. So is the capacity for land to regenerate, as we know it from green revolution areas. And there are many examples of this kind can be cited in all walks of life. Now, what happens is that this replacement, as the replacement progresses, there is a radical transformation that happens. First, human energy of able-bodied persons is replaced by mechanical energy. Consequently, all human beings are replaced by machines. And either human beings become dependent on machines or they become totally redundant. Here, the process of replacement of work of nature by work of machines is the process that leads to the deforestation of the mind. Can you show me the picture, Nikita? The diagram of which is called the deforested mind. Hello?
The image, sir?
Yeah, the image, the deforested mind image.
Yes, sir. I'll just do that. 1 minute. Also request, sir, if you could just bring the mic a little closer.
Is it okay? Is this okay?
Yes, I think the voice was slightly low. I'll just do the presentation.
Yeah. I have a visual that shows what a deforested mind would look like, and this is a painting made by a Mexican painter.
One of our student volunteers is essentially showing it. Just a moment.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. So here is a painting that shows you the deforested mind. If you will notice that the man is in the middle, right at the bottom, and what is surrounding the man is all that is there in his head. And if you notice that all this is parts of the world in which he lives. Very
If you
carefully
could
look at
zoom in
it.
the image, please, Harshlata, it'll be better.
Just look at all the objects that are there here. It has monuments, it has stairs, it has keys, it has toilets, it has bottles, it has machines. It has everything that this man needs to make his life happy and good in modern society. I don't want to call this modernization because it's a very feeble and a weak word to describe this phenomena. What you should notice is that the green part, which I think is a forest, is outside his mind totally. It is not there inside his mind at all. There's not even a plant in his mind. So the forest has been pushed out of his mind totally. Right? Now please pay attention to this and remember this picture because I'm going to be talking about this as we go. Can I see the other picture about the forest habitat? Just remember the ratio. The man is small and his head is full of objects that he needs in everyday life. Can we look at the other picture? And the other picture is really very, very important because none of us actually would have been to the forest and lived in the forest. And this image is very important for you to keep in mind for the next part of my presentation. Please enlarge this image. Not
Just
this
1
one.
second, sir. Harshlata, the last photo that I just shared, could you please present that?
This is the deforested mind, and the other one is going to tell you the image of what is there in the mind of a forest dweller.
So there is a request if you could speak a little louder.
Yeah, okay. Is it better?
Just one
This is
second.
yes.
My share option is a little, the computer is causing issues. We'll just share the other image that
Okay, so I'll
you
just
sent me.
continue to speak.
Hanji, please. Thank
So, when dwelling in a forest, the mind is filled with a large variety of living beings, human and non-human, living and non-living, abstract and concrete. Each of these is known to the forest dwellers in a variety of cycles of life and death, resolution and regeneration, appearing and disappearing. The variety of greens and browns in the forest landscape, created from the interplay of these plural life cycles, provides a camouflage that shelters each of the beings from the other and creates conditions for each to relate to each other interdependently. Now, this is a very important thing to note, that in the forest we see all kinds of living beings. Right? They are carnivores, they are herbivores, they are small insects, they are very pretty birds, they are small flowers, and all of them live in the same universe. The much talked about social harmony of forest dwellers, which includes all living beings, is a simplification of a very complex set of relationships. There is conflict, there is competition, there is violence, there is caring, there is harmony and disharmony, there is symmetry and asymmetry, there is big and small, there is wide, there is herbivores and carnivores. All of them happen to live in one universe. In this fullness of relationship that makes the forest landscape wholesome, mysterious, enigmatic, fearsome, romantic, awesome, magnificent, and the basis of a political and a basis of a practical philosophy. There is absent in the forest processes of exclusion and inclusion, of relentless othering, of hegemonizing, of marginalization. The tiger is not the king of the forest, and the deer is not a poor little thing. It is not just birds, plants, animals. There are a very important place for insects also in the forest. Human beings, alongside several different living beings, learn to know each other by the semiotics of sound, gestures, memory and forgetting, by a labor that is both intellectual and manual, right? And it gives rise to a whole range of reasonings. All these modes of reasoning are developed with the recognition of limits and possibilities of the human imagination, of boundaries and horizons. The wholeness of these reasonings says the fundamental boundary is that which is not invested with human labor does not belong to you, because there is a responsibility to care for it. Thus, any product which this is the forest, right? Imagine in this you will see the product has 95% of the work of nature and 5% of the human being who's sitting right in their little corner. It is important to note that all this is expressive of a buoyant intentionality. I repeat, buoyant, B-O-U-Y-A-N-T, buoyant intentionality. And why I use the word buoyant is, what is significant to this buoyant intentionality is water. The most significant and the most important part of the metabolisms of the forest universe. Deforestation, I would just like to add a footnote, deforestation leads to dehydration of the imagination, which I will point out very soon. Now, please keep this image in mind while I'm making the next part of my presentation. Now, there is a geometry to the forest universe. I repeat, there is a geometry to the forest universe that nurtures the buoyant relationship in a way that at all points of time, everything is in relationship to everything else. This has been demonstrated by the fact that a slight change in any one element of the forest has repercussions for every other element in the forest. Conversely, initiatives to bring back the forest onto deforested lands have demonstrated any one element can bring back all the relationships and inhabitants of the forest universe. This geometry of the buoyant forest can be grasped. This is very important. Can I see the list of properties, please? The third slide. Now, how are we to grasp this geometry and the
Yes.
buoyancy of the forest and of the mind? So please understand, I'm emphasizing here that the forest is buoyant and it gives rise to a buoyant intentionality of the mind, right? And this buoyant intentionality of the mind has been captured by 15 properties of living structures by Christopher Alexander, who's an architect. He's written 3 volumes called the Nature of Order, and this is in the first volume called The Phenomenon of Life. Can I see the 15 properties, please?
Yes, sir, on it.
Okay. So now, what are the 15 properties? The wholesome beauty of the forest emerges from a variety of scales, which means there is big, there is small, there is tiny. The first is the level of scales. There is big, there is small, there is tiny, there are mountains, there are animals, there are plants. Everything is in a different, at a whole range of scales. Then there are strong centers, evenly distributed over the forest landscape. What is the center? Every entity that stands up on its own and has an entity of its own occupies the center. The forest is a collection of very strong centers. There are thick and thin boundaries. There is alternative repetition of symmetries, right? There is positive space where people can live. There are good shapes which contribute to beauty. There's a wide variety of symmetries. There's interlocking ambiguity and deep interlocking ambiguity in the processes of symbiosis. There is gradient. There's a whole range of levels and slopes, rise and fall in the forest. There is roughness. Forest is very rough. The texture of the forest is very rough in all its aspects. There is no polished, as you know of in the modern society, there is no polished sheen given to you by glazes and other such technological processes. There is echoes. What does echo mean? There are echoes of colors, the echoes of sounds, the echoes of living beings talking to each other through resonances. There is void. Void here means a sense of mystery, a sense of uh, getting completely lost. So when we go to a forest, we do feel a certain sense of mystery hitting us the moment we see a forest in the middle of forest. There is simplicity, right? It's not very complex. It's very simple. Look at the shape of a leaf. Look at the shape of a tree. There is simplicity and there is beauty in simplicity. And at the same time, all of it is inner calm. When you go to the forest, it's very calm. And all this is not to be understood only as differentiations of varieties, but it's telling you about that each of us is separate in a non-separate sense. We have identities, but we are not separate from each other. Now, this is the geometry of the forest that we see, and this geometry underlies the metabolism and the buoyancy of life force. This buoyant intentionality, you can remove this from the screen, please. The buoyant intentionality of each of these elements and all of them together, right, is responsible. With this comes the fullness of feeling, thinking, willing, and believing, knowing and doubting that is embedded in the relationship between living beings and non-living beings. The universe of the forest. The dwellers the dwellers see intentionality in the living entity forest. The forest is not a dead entity. The forest is a living entity. And their definition of life is that every living entity has intentionality. Right? Such buoyancy, such buoyant intentionality is in the present continuous. A sense of belonging, which is all inclusive. It extends the imagination to the limits of what nature itself is and what is self-active nature. So when you're living in such a place, your imagination extends alongside the things that you think about in everyday life. Right? The long cycles, the short cycles, your imaginations are carried by these cycles to extraordinary limits. Right? And the most important thing is that the mind knows what is immediate and efficient causes without losing sense of the finality and final causes, which is understood as the presence of being in present continuous. Now this is an important part of the mind that lives in the forest. I repeat that it knows of immediate causes and efficient causes, and without losing sense of the larger finality of causes, which is called being in present continuous. Now, what happens to this mind when it moves out of the forest? Right? As I said in the beginning of the presentation, that the labor that you do is replaced by machines. The sense of order of the forest as a living organism, articulated by the 15 properties, is replaced by a sense of order that arranges things not in its geometric properties but by its mathematical properties. I repeat, the sense of order changes from geometric to arithmetic. Accordingly, the living forest organism becomes a collection of thousands of species. Right? It is of economic value. It is an endowment. It is a measured territory with a measured biomass and so on and so forth. In this arithmetic, the qualitative dimension of the forest is seen through a set of binaries. Right? The arithmetic value is enhanced when the entity is modern, when the entity is civilized, when it is based on scientific truth, when it is amenable to reason, which is progressive, which is pure, it is moral, it is objective, it is human, it is modern, it is law-abiding, it contributes to wealth, justice, adult-like behavior, and contributes to the development of modern science and technology. This is the arithmetic logic that the mind begins to think of when it moves out of the forest. I repeat, the geometry of the forest, the geometrical logic of beauty, the geometric logic of living structures is now replaced by the arithmetic of numbers. To get to know the truth of the shift of geometric orders to arithmetic orders, it will be necessary to study the origins of such arithmetic in its place of origin in Europe. This is, however, not the scope of my presentation right now. This is the subject of a different paper altogether. And incidentally, I must say that much of this arithmetic has been discussed by Edmund Husserl when he talks about the philosophy of arithmetic in the context of coming crisis of European science. However, what we need to recognize here is that we are confronted with a situation which says there is no freedom of choice in this matter, which really means that we cannot do away with the machines anymore. Ananya Sharma, please keep your question intact. I'll let it in. Right? We have no choice. We have come to a point where we cannot live without machines. We have benefited so much from the machines. What this means is, on the one hand, it draws attention to the numerous benefits of the arithmetics by means of machines that produced for us the benefits of social life. The drudgery of labor has been reduced. It's argued that the drudgery of labor has been reduced by machines and we cannot do anything about it. We have to live with it. On the other hand, you have to remember that this arithmetic is unable to grasp the depth of alienation, disenchantment, and estrangement, which we are expected, which has now become omnipotent phenomena, and which now is the omnipresent phenomena of dehydration. I repeat that we know that technology alienates, we know that technology disenchants, we know that technology estranges, but we don't know that what all this means is a dehydration of the imagination, right? Which is very important. This is an important point, that the deforested mind is a dehydrated mind. It has no buoyancy at all. And this
So,
has,
if I may interrupt, we have 5 more minutes.
yeah, I'll finish. All this has a very deep impact, which is that more than economic and social and cultural, the deep impact is visible in the mentality of people at large. At the core of this intentionality is dehydration. Now, I want to give you an example of what the word dehydration actually means here. As nations across the continents war towards a multipolar world, the loneliness industry seems to rise. It has become $1 billion industry now, alongside a spike of PTSDs. So what we see is that with the rise of machines in our life, the loneliness increases and the rise of post-traumatic disorder syndrome diseases have begun to rise. And this gap is filled by AI, the latest and the most enigmatic and the most mesmerizing development of machines. These developments require an investigation into the limits and possibilities of mechanization of social life. Not many people will agree with this. They see each of these investigations as a negative because it is against the grain of the trend of modernization and progress. The investigation that I should persuade these people to look at is not about going against the grain. On the contrary, it is an effort to understand the mindfulness of the grain of mechanization of social life, the nadir of which is artificial intelligence. Rational logical communication of the intentionality of investigation is instead difficult to communicate. There is a discomfort that is overshadowed by the comfort of the magical spell of AI technology. The discomfort is the raison d'etre of loneliness. What are the details of this industry? We'll have to discuss at a later point of time. So far, loneliness has been viewed as a sum total of disenchantment, estrangement, anomie, and alienation, a sense of lack of fulfillment. All this is true. Today in the world, the warring of multipolarities, the fear factor has become the most important factor. Right? What I'm saying is, in addition to disenchantment, estrangement, anomie, and alienation, we are now faced with the fear factor. And the fear factor I want to suggest is because we are surrounded by machines all the time. While machines are very important for us, but the presence of machines all around us, the absence of human beings, has escalated the fear factor. Those who aspire to become rapidly rich are lonely because they are cut out, they're in a cutthroat competition. It gives them no place for restful social interaction. Those who are very poor because of marginalization, have been deprived of the work, are lonely because they have very little hope of struggling and surviving. Common to all this is dehydration of the mind, body, and the spirit on account of loneliness. The hypothesis is that the loneliness that comes with mechanization of social life dehydrates. The phenomenon of dehydration is described as the deforestation of the mind. Accordingly, loneliness is loss of buoyancy to social life on account of mechanization. Thank you very much. I hope I am on time, Rashi.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Thank you so much for actually very thought-provoking presentation. I will open the floor for discussion. Please type your questions, any comments that you have. I'll give my comments just after the discussion is over. Did you get any questions directed to you, sir? Because
They
there are
can
no.
they can ask it directly.
No, I
Yes.
don't.
Please raise your hands if you want to.
I think there was one hand raised while I was talking.
Okay, till people are maybe still trying to think about all the points that you raised. I think this also sets a context for our next presentation, because what Professor Madan's presentation also is going to do is to make us rethink this in the context of our education system, and how that really takes away the questions that. Oh, we have a question here. Yes, Harshlata.
Greetings, sir. Sir, my question is that as we know that we are living in India, and India is rich in forest and all the things, but we need development also to generate more and more employment. So how can we just like balance both the things out? Because we know that for like making institution and infrastructure, we have to cut forest, and it is essential for the
Harshita,
development also.
that's what I said. And the trickiest problem is the statement that we have no choice. So everybody who is aware of deforestation says, well, we can't do without it. So we stop thinking about it. Right? And yours is a very valid question, but I want to make a factual correction. The development does not generate employment. This is a fact. Development means more technology. More technology means less people. The first important thing that Marx told us was that there is a battle between capital and labor. Capital investment reduces labor. It does not want labor. If you look at statistics today, people who've done engineering, who've done PhDs, are running scooters, running tea stalls, running water pipes. So, first, development does not generate employment. Second, deforestation, is it really necessary to the extent that is happening? We never ask this question. We need resources, that is true. But is this the way to get resources, to alienate people who know these resources very well? For example, I'll tell you, the 99% of the plants that you gather from indigenous people are being used by the pharmaceutical industry on the basis of their knowledge. But nobody even acknowledged the fact that these plants have been discovered by them without the physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics that is there in modern science. There is no acknowledgement of the fact in the intellectual property right regimes at all. So this is not the way. You see, Margaret Thatcher said that there is no other alternative. Tina. Right? And the World Social Forum says, Tata. There are 1,000 alternatives. The battleground today in the world politics is saying Tata to Tina. And that is a very big struggle. We cannot accept the way things are going as if that is the only possible way, and that is called Tina. There is no other alternative other than cutting trees the way we do it, other than mindless doing urban development, mindlessly dehydrating under groundwater resources, mindlessly polluting the sea with plastics and toxic material. Absolutely mindless. There is no reason why they should. Look at Punjab. Look at Himachal. Look at the northeast. These things are heavily avoidable, right? So to accept that this is the way, this is the only way to do it, I think I want to put a question mark to this and say, let us sit back and think. Is this really the only way to do it? And that's a difficult question, Harshita. It has no immediate answers.
We have 3 questions in the chat box and 1 raised hand. I'll connect 2 questions.
Okay.
One is by Pallavi, who says, can you give an example of how communities have preserved their forested minds despite modern changes? And Kinjal is also asking something similar on the lines of how does the idea of deforested mind affect the way we think about culture and society today? So these are connected questions. That's why I thought maybe we take them.
I'll take the second one first. You see, we have a very our sense of multiplicity and diversity is very problematic, right? And why I say this is, hang on, I just done something wrong. And why I say this is that the forest is the best example for what multiplicity and diversity actually means, right? It is all inclusive, as I said in the beginning, right? There are insects, there are carnivores, there are herbivores, there are beautiful plants, and all of them are coexistent. Now this is, to me, this is the foundational value of the forest. How do people respect each other's boundaries without there being boundaries literally drawn there? How do they allow for each other's social life to happen without actually intruding into it? There is a food chain in the forest, very true, but the food chain is very different from the food chain that we have developed in modern society. The first important thing is that in a forested mind, the idea of multiplicity and diversity is very different. And it is inclusive of all. You know, if you will notice that the big species and the small species live by side of each other, and the principle is symbiosis, to put it very simply. Now so forest teaches us how it is possible for carnivores and herbivores to live together. In the modern social structure, multiplicity and pluralism are ways of exclusion, not of inclusion. Please understand the underlying logic. You have to be, you are, for example, multiplicity means multiples of the one, right? In simple arithmetic, multiplicity means multiples of the one. You multiply 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 and you get 20, 25. You multiply 2 into 2 into 2 into 2, you get another number. So what does this mean? That the dominant one is replicated in each aspect of multiplicity. So your multiplicity is an act of cloning. So we become like the dominant one in order to become multiple. Plurality is not respected. Plurality would mean the story of Tower of Babel. Have you heard the story of Tower of Babel? The Tower of Babel story is that people wanted to go to heavens and they started to make a tower. But God said, wow, this is not a good thing to happen. So He gave them different languages. And they fought with each other and the Tower of Babel could not be made. This is the fate of pluralism in modern social life. Two people with different languages can't see eye to eye with each other. Right? Therefore, what we need to learn from the forest is not only that it is a collection of species, which is the arithmetic of forest, but we need to learn from the forest dweller's mind the geometry of beauty. And this is getting far away from us, because in the ecology circles and in the scientific circles, you only study species specific behavior. No ecologist I know has ever commented on the totality of the universe of the forest, except for anthropologists. And if you want to understand the totality of the universe, I recommend to read Vishwajit Pandya, who's worked on the Andaman Islands. He got 3 books, and he gives you a people's view of the forest. I have talked about this in different articles, not as unity, but referring to this unity in different ways, how it addresses modernization. For example, I have an article on tiger and the honeybee. And the story is that tiger is not the king of the forest. It is capital that decides capital is the king of the forest. It's very, very macho and predatory idea of the species. The Khariyas think that the honeybee is the queen of the forest. And the king's job, and the tiger's job is to be chowkidar, to provide safety for this process of manufacturing of nectar. Now, these are important ways which development does not recognize. And that's why I'm saying that deforestation of the mind means dehydration of the imagination. And dehydrated imaginations can only see arithmetic and not geometry. I hope I made my point clear.
We'll take one more question. So the person who raised their hand, I can't see them anymore. I think Sumayu or somebody was there.
Sumayu.
Yes, Sumayu. Can you please
Hello,
ask your question?
sir.
I think that's
As
the
you told about deforested mind, so I want to ask, how does the idea of deforested mind affect the way we think about culture and society today?
I told you, Surmayu, that
This was just answered.
multiplicity and diversity. A deforested mind does not have the imagination to see the geometry of diversity. It only sees the arithmetic of diversity. In other words, it does not see beautiful shapes. It does not see how carnivores and herbivores can live together, how vegetarians and non-vegetarians can live together. In modern society, the vegetarians would be herbivores and carnivores would be non-vegetarians. They don't see eye to eye. And in the forest, they just live side by side. They respect each other so much. Despite the food chain. And remember, survival of the fittest is not the way it has been interpreted. Have you read Jonathan Livingston Seagull? Please read this book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. You'll get an idea of what does it mean to be fit to survive. Jonathan Livingston Seagull was a bird who did not want to be with the flock. It wanted to experiment all the time with what are possibilities of flying in the sky. And that becomes the key species for the next generation. The fittest is those who adventure outside the box to try new things. Not fittest are those who fight each other and kill each other. That is not the idea of the survival of the fittest. Yes, Tanya.
Good morning, sir. So my
Yes.
question is, how do current advances in AI and neuroscience basically reshape our understanding of mind itself?
It's a very good question, but I would say that the mind and the brain are two different things. Please remember that. Neuroscience tells us the functioning of the brain, and it then extrapolates from there how the mind would be functioning. But the mind is a completely different entity, right? And there is a big debate on this relationship between mind and brain in current psychoanalysis and neurosciences. There's a long discussion, but that's a very important point, and we can have another session to discuss it. But just remember, mind and the brain are not the same thing. Many good books on this, which we can discuss later, but my request to you is for now, please try and research on the difference between the mind and the brain. And what happens when the mind is equated with the brain. Let me give you an example. There's a lot of research on plant intelligence, right? And people are saying that plants are also intelligent, but they don't have a brain. So now we're getting to understand, is there a way of understanding intelligence with and without the brain, which is inclusive of both? There's a big discussion on this in science and philosophy. Plants also think. Now, if we want to extend the logic further, and if we go along with the forest dwellers, mountains also think. But the science is not yet ready to undertake the investigation to find out how can we understand the idea of intelligence, which includes animate and inanimate, living and non-living both, as part of a system of thought. Lot of your whole idea of a lie detector test emerges from on studying plant intelligence. Lie detector tests that are used by modern technology have been derived from experiments done on plant intelligence. So here is a thought for you. If plants can think, then it is not necessary that you need to have a brain to think. And if you want to extend the logic to understand how tribals and forest dwellers have been thinking, water can also think. How does the forest as a whole entity think? How do mountains think? I mean, if you know Ramana Maharshi, he used to talk to a mountain all the time, and the mountain was talking to him all the time. So there is a huge range of imaginations that open up if you understand that landscapes is not to be equated with nature as we understand it in the laboratory. There are two different orders of nature. And if you want to know more about this, I've written an article on this called Water and H2O. It's been published in EPW. It's a little complicated article, but there's the point I'm trying to make. Landscapes are not equal to oxygen, or H2O is not equal to water. They're two different entities altogether. For example, water flowing in the river is not the same as water manufactured in the company. Do you understand that, Tanya? Water that has been, the Ganges that has been flowing for centuries is not the same as the water that you produce in bottles in factories by Bisleri and other companies. They're not the same at all. And simple difference is one is manufactured and one is the work of nature. Now we don't have, the science is not yet equipped to grasp this work of nature. For example, science is not ready to confront the question, how do forest dwellers and indigenous people know about medicinal properties of plants without physics, chemistry, biology and mathematics? What is their observation capacity? What is their analytical capacity? How do they process information? How do they share information? What are the trials that they do? All these are very important questions which science is not willing to entertain. They're too involved with the machines to understand nature, right? There's another area of mechanization. Today, science is getting exceedingly mechanized to study nature, exceedingly mechanized. And Edwin Husserl makes this point that he raises a question, is there too much of technology in science? Here's an article by this title. And we need to take these questions seriously. My plea to and respect to all of you is that because we don't see any options now, we should not make the statement we have no choice.
Sir, can I interrupt you here? We can take all the other questions. They can type it here in the chat box. I will forward it to the organizers and they can probably forward it to you, or I can do that.
I
Maybe
just
some of
want
the
to make one last point.
Yeah.
The reason why we should not lose hope or make this sentence there is no choice, because remember, it's on record. The reason, as we know of it, REASON, it took 1,000 years to create. 1,000 years to create reason as we know of it, REASON. If you want to find it out, read Heidegger's lectures on the principle of reason, lecture 1, sentence 1.
Okay. Thank you so much.
There is a lot of hope, don't worry.
On the note of hope, we'll go on to the next speaker. We have Professor Amman Madan, who's also be probably taking a lot of questions that have already been raised in the first session forward in the context of education. There will be discussion on the question of geometric logic through aesthetics of education and rational education, different ways of knowing, the knower, and so on. So I'll introduce Professor Madan. He's currently at the Department of Sociology and Social Anthropology at Azim Premji University, Bhopal. His research focuses on education as a means to address social stratification and identity politics, alongside his interest in social theory. He completed his MSc in anthropology from Punjab University, Chandigarh, followed by an MPhil and PhD under the guidance of Professor Abhijit Pathak at JNU. He has worked with institutions such as JNU's Academic Staff College, HBCSE, and Eklavya, and since 2010 has been teaching at IIT Kanpur, where he has also recognized, actually has taught at IIT Kanpur, where he has been recognized for excellence in teaching. He's also taught at institutions like TIS and JNU, and has actively engaged with NGOs such as Digantar and Eklavya that I've already mentioned. He's also served on different committees, state boards, has been member of the Education Dialogue Trust, and has sought to bridge the scholarship between activism and social engagement. I invite Professor Madan to deliver his presentation, which is titled The Challenge of Community and Dialogue in a Rational Education.
Thank you, Rashi. And thanks to all of you for giving me this opportunity to be here. And particularly the opportunity to hear Sachita once again. It's always such a pleasure to be witness to the breadth of vision he has. I have many questions, but I'll take them up with him later. I don't want to take up the students and faculty's time here. So my own paper is actually about the challenge being posed to university and school education, which is coming up from social identities and their own respective perceptions of valid knowledge. Across the world, we are hearing that schools are dominated by Western knowledge. We are hearing this from Africa, South America, China, and of course, in India. In India, we are seeing contestations of school and university knowledge, not only by Hindutva groups, but also by Dalit, tribal, feminist organizations. We have also seen a long-standing critique of school knowledge by Marxist groups, which claim that school knowledge and university knowledge, college knowledge, which claim that all of this is primarily designed to suit managers and owners and not workers. So we have a number of such contestations. Unfortunately, we see most of the time, whenever you have new curricula coming up, they are being pushed through by administrative and political force. This particular paper, what I'm trying to argue, is that perhaps dialogue is a better way of deciding what should be taught. And what do we do to prepare for dialogue? Dialogue is better, but you have to prepare for dialogue. How does one prepare for dialogue? So let me start by very briefly explaining what do I mean by saying this is the age of rational education. Now, early humans and most of us till a couple of centuries ago, many of us even now, primarily learned in our family and our neighborhood through informal methods. Children learn by observations, trying things out, playing with them, with just occasional directions and nudges from the more knowledgeable. Formal, systematic instruction with a directed, conscious, explicitly articulated goal and explicit feedback loops was rare. Schools and universities, as formal institutions of learning, where specialized teachers taught full-time students, seem to have first emerged with the growth of social inequality and social differentiation. Such specialized institutions existed in small numbers for thousands of years, going in hand with actually the move out of forests, and they come up with the move out of forests, with the rise of intensive agriculture and the emergence of cities. In Buddhist institutions, for example, for the 1500 years ago, like Nalanda, we have evidence of formalization and rationalization. With a centralized institution, the existence of curricula, rules for admissions, and rules for progressions to higher levels of learning. But very few people went to places like Nalanda, and those who did were mostly men. Now, similar institutions also existed in the ancient period in Mesopotamia, what we today call Mesopotamia, no longer called Mesopotamia, but was once known that entire area as Mesopotamia, and China, and later began to emerge in Europe as well. But education in the sense of schools and universities really began to expand across the world as recently as the second half of the 18th century. The growth of mass education, and this was all still happening for small numbers, but when we start saying that everybody should go to school, and now we are saying everybody should go to universities, to college, this is actually something which only begins from the setting up of public institutions for education in places like Prussia and in the beginning of the 19th century. So mass schooling was subsequently taken up by states in many parts of the world. It's a recent thing, and this is a shift. This is what and I'll try to argue that this is a shift into a different kind of way of working together, different ways of thinking and organizing things. This was accompanied by the belief that schools were a means of access to a cultured life and to ethically superior existence. In India, the British, we know, gave a big jump, push to this with their arrival in the shape of formal organizations from the 19th century onwards. Now, with Max Weber, we can see this as a worldwide pattern of the growth of technical instrumental reason. This has been a growth of systematization and rationalization of content and process so as to match them with the goals of education, and it's becoming explicit, formalized. The popularity of such technical rationality, and it's very important to note, is primarily because it consolidates power. It's not all about power, but very prominently about power. Formal organizations are able to coordinate larger numbers of people and push them towards a common goal. Formal organizations do this much more efficiently for repetitive tasks than how informal organizations are able to do, and are able to work at much larger scales than kinship-based or patrimonial organizations. The concentration of power is at the core of formal organizations, and that's why the state in many parts of the world, and even institutions like the church and a number of interest groups, have promoted schools and universities in the format of formal organizations for the last couple of centuries. Now, I should very quickly point out that it's not necessary that formal organizations will always be oppressive in character. There are also many examples of democratic, decentralized forms of formal organizations. For example, we have seen the existence of democratic schools, or you have the way several kinds of cooperatives have operated and so on. In such institutions, we do see the examples of human beings creating organizations which have the advantages of systematization and rationalization with much less of an oppressive structure. Critical pedagogy is a prominent approach in education which tries to share and democratize the responsibility of formulating curricula and pedagogies within formal organizations. However, the way most schools and universities came up showed a contrasting emphasis and instead tried to push particular curricula and particular processes which compelled everyone, teachers and students, to accept them. This got connected with other institutional rules. For example, the British, along with the arrival of their kind of formal organizations and schools over here, they declared that in 1844, that if you wanted a job with the state, you had to have a certificate from the British schools. So this creates a situation where examinations, the fear of being left out of the labor market, and poor teacher education, which does not teach individual teachers to think, all of these have combined to make educational institutions a highly integrated and very tightly controlled site with very little space for autonomy. A prominent method used to concentrate power has been to claim validity for the content taught in education institutions. The growth of formal organizations and scientific thinking in Western Europe had been a great asset for them in the colonial project and in colonizing a large part of the world. And not surprisingly, then science and Western civilization had become the accepted norm of valid curricula in schools and universities around the world, not just in India, but around the world. And this helped in getting support for schools and universities from their political environment. And it also helped in persuading teachers and students about the correctness of what they were doing. Education was presented as a universal truth, claiming to have, like Western academics at one point of time claimed to have, a God's eye view of the universe. Now, I must quickly point out this is not unique to formal organizations. It's not unique to Western academics. This is actually drawing upon metaphors and claims which are very widely held, not by everybody, but which are widely held in Christian theology, in Islamic theology, and also in Hindu theology. That we know everything. All of which claim to have a final grasp of eternal truth. Now, within each of these, you have dissidents also to such an epistemological position, but curricula and educational institutions, because they were about power, most commonly carried forth as if they had all the answers. The opposition to this universal view of organizations, their knowledge, reason, has come from several sources. In the Indian freedom struggle, we have seen several criticisms coming up of such a view of education. And we have a lot of different interpretations of education which clashed with British curricula. There were Gokhale's views on education. There was a setting up of national schools. Bhagat Singh was a product of one of those. National schools, national colleges, as part of the non-cooperation movement. And the Gandhi's Nai Talim is the most well-known and most elaborately developed alternative to British curricula. And in all of these, they challenged the claims of universal reason that British schools and universities are making. Indian nationalists like Gandhi argued that British schools actually taught, in the name of universal knowledge, taught actually a culture that was specifically British and specifically colonialist in character. It sought to teach subservience to British political and economic agendas. This was to be confronted by an Indian view of culture, which would lead to Swaraj, and which was not just a political Swaraj, but an economic and a cultural Swaraj also. So I'm just mentioning that we hear a lot of talk about decolonizing education, but very often people are again just copying Western narratives of talking about decolonization. In India, we have a long history of struggling against this, and asking difficult questions about education and the truths it is claiming to have. Now, within Western academics itself, from the last two generations, we have post-structuralists, postmodernists, a number of other groups who came to ascendance, and they had more visibility within academics, and they questioned foundationalist versions of how we are getting our knowledge. The foundationalists believed that it was possible to have strong foundations for knowledge, but the non-foundationalists denied this, and there are a number of different perspectives came up in Western academics about this. They said we never have a direct grasp of reality. We are always perceiving it through cultural lenses. We grow up with certain experiences and certain exposures to ideas, and we are building particular ways of seeing and understanding the world. Everybody, nobody has a God's eyes perspective of the world. We are always constructing representations, and hence can never be completely certain that we have a full and correct picture of what we seek to understand. We may claim greater and greater approximation of external reality, but we can never still have rock solid foundations. Foundations are beyond challenge. Now, this is a problem for certainty, not just in empirical work, and then observation of facts, but it is even more of a problem in the construction of ethical problems, ethical principles. Now, how do I think about ethical certainty? Now, we know that a number of philosophers and social thinkers have claimed great certainty in their ethical principles. Even people like Kant, for example, was one of the whom we call moral realists, who believe it's possible to figure it out in an absolutist way. That Kant believed that to challenge his view of ethics, he was so certain about it, was to challenge reason itself. Now, others sought to justify their ethical positions by claiming divine sanction. So it's a problem not only in academics, it's a problem in a lot of the world, outside academics also. For example, the 10 Commandments claim to have come from God directly. Therefore, this ethics cannot be challenged. You'll find similar things, similar claims being made by people who are talking about Islamic principles or Hindu principles. Why? Because they're coming from my interpretation of Sanatan Dharma, or my interpretation of the Quran or the Hadith and so on. And because of that, the argument is that these have full legitimacy and validity. See, these are absolutist positions of ethics. And all of this now becomes something which you have to question. In a number of disciplines and knowledge systems, like political science, or other knowledge systems like that, which has come up around Dalit literature, or which has come up around feminist scholarship, there is a widespread acceptance now that knowledge is deeply influenced by its social location, by the social location of its creators and by the social location of those who are propagating it. The community and social location has now become the center of our attention. Whenever we try to ask what legitimizes knowledge, we don't say, oh, I got it from that book and God dictated that book. We're saying it's created by human beings. But which human beings? I have to ask that. So this community has become the center of our attention, and we are trying to ask, what is the legitimacy? What is the justification of knowledge? Even in Western ethics, in philosophy departments in the West, there is a vigorous and large body of scholars who believe that while moral reasoning is important, ultimately ethics rests upon intuition. And intuition rests upon community life. So the community is something we have to take very seriously when we think about what do I teach? What is worth learning? I have to keep asking this question. And I cannot have a God's eye view with everything is universally true. It doesn't work. So this trend of relating knowledge to social location thus poses a fatal challenge, in my view, to claims of universal reason and to the God's eye version of knowledge. Schools and universities can no longer now claim that they have complete and final validity in what they are teaching. But now we are faced with new dangers. If this is my position, that how do I know that this is really correct? Maybe why is my community's point of view not there? But now we are faced with new dangers. The first of these dangers is that of careless and self-centered thinking, which is now feels itself, I'm free from all questions of methods or rigor. And what I'm comfortable with, what I'm familiar with, has to be true. This is the first danger. And I see a lot of people doing this. All universities, all talk of methodology is nonsense. So whatever I see, whatever I get, what I'm hearing around me is true. But this is dangerous. This is casual, very careless thinking. And it's worse. It can be a form of arrogance. So we have to be careful about this danger. We have to guard ourselves from it. The second danger is actually a methodological one now. Now, if you're saying that social location creates understanding, then how do you check this? How do you check any understanding? Can anybody from any other group ever check somebody else's understanding? This is a second problem, and it's a great danger which, if we don't pay attention to it, locks us up into groups which can never talk to each other. How do I deal with this? Now, luckily, there are a number of scholars who are saying it is actually possible to talk across communities. No community actually has a watertight, hermetically sealed cognitive
Professor Madan, we lost your voice. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
somehow I got muted. Somebody happily muted me. Okay, never mind. So, so I was saying that there are many people who argue that it's possible to talk across communities. It's not impossible. We have to learn how to do that. And that's what I'll just come to. But just to give you an example, why it is possible to talk across communities. Take, for example, the cleft and the wall, it seems we have between Western ways of thinking and Indian ways of thinking. Is that really a wall? Or is it a porous wall? So if you take one of the classics on epistemology in Indian traditions, which is Gautama's Nyaya Sutras, the sources or the praman of cognition or gyan, which Gautama's Nyaya Sutras mention, include things like pratyaksh or observation, anuman or inference, upman or comparison, and shabd or verbal testimony. These are actually shared by Western science and by social science. So it's not that these are groups which can never talk to each other. Their epistemological systems may not be identical, but they can talk to each other. Now, how does one then begin to talk about this? People have, yeah, something is happening about breakout rooms. Yeah.
Be something else. We have 5 more minutes for your presentation.
Right. So how does one do this? Many people argue that what we need to do is we must cultivate now dialogue. Earlier, the emphasis was on how to know, in teaching how to know. Now we must also, along with that, now teaching how to know now has the challenge that there are multiple systems of knowing. Now we must, along with that, also talk about teaching how to have a dialogue. And teaching how to have a dialogue has to be taught. It has to be worked upon. It has to be labor has to be put into it. Dialogue has for dialogue to why would you have to put labor into dialogue? We have to put labor into dialogue because dialogue is only possible under certain conditions. Dialogue is not possible in every time and everywhere. Somebody is actually keeping on hitting the
I'm so
breakout
sorry, sir.
rooms.
So sorry. Actually, we're having multiple oral presentations online as well.
All right.
We'll just look into it. So sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just quickly wrap up my argument. What I'm saying is that to teach dialogue, it has 3-4 requirements. One is that there is a basic set of concepts, values, skills, which are required for dialogue. People need to learn how to listen to each other. This has to be taught. People have to learn to understand the other's needs beyond the immediate claims. What are the other's basic needs? People need to know how to talk without being insulting, without being threatening. People need to be able to reason on moral questions. What does it mean to be reasoning on moral questions? And what are the basic rules of coherent thinking? This has to be taught. Yeah? The second kind of necessary requirement is that of a concern for both my own goals and others' goals. Now, this is an emotional position, and this is necessary for dialogue. If I don't have a concern for the other person's goals or for the other person, I cannot have a dialogue. Dialogue requires a concern for others. This has to be taught. Thirdly, and I can explain this later in the questions if you like. Thirdly, there are temperaments involved with dialogue which have to be cultivated or at least controlled. If I'm habitually aggressive, I can't have a dialogue. Now, so I have to work on temperaments also. Power is also important here, but power works as a way of when these three things are not in place, people can be tempted to try to squash the other person. So a balance of power encourages people to look for dialogue. If there's a great inequality of power, people are tempted to avoid dialogue and just try to do things through coercion. Now, all of these have to be taught. My last 2 points I want to make is dialogue calls for a willingness on both sides to try to understand the other's point of view. This may appear distasteful, but it is a necessary condition for a more complete understanding. It helps in building arguments that can persuade the other group of the validity of one's own claims. This can be an elaborate process, but I mean, even going to war, learning to be a warrior is an elaborate process. Learning to have dialogue also is an elaborate process. Learning to do maths is an elaborate process. But if this is necessary for our times, we have to invest the time and effort into it. Let me wrap up by paraphrasing what a number of scholars have been saying. Shaila Ben Habib, Krishnamurti, J. Krishnamurti, Habermas, many others have been saying. They are saying that we are now in an age where using the blunt edge of force to force people to accept claims can no longer be sustained. To sustain our increasingly complex social organizations and our technology, we need to be rational and also reflexive and humane. We must now recognize that no single group or individual has the final understanding of anything. Taking the path of arrogance and of isolation from other points of view is not sustainable. Instead, the path to knowledge must now include dialogue within it. This calls for us to promote this in schools and in universities. We need to promote not just knowing, but how to have dialogues over knowing. And we have to create those conditions as well as the personal qualities which are needed for dialogue. Thank you. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Without taking much, without taking much time here, I'll quickly open it up for questions and then quickly wrap up the session. I think the organizers are telling me they're running late. Is that so? Yeah, 10 minutes. So please raise your hands if you have questions or type them in the chat box. We already have one, so maybe I'll start with that. How can we make sure that voices from less powerful or marginalized groups really influence what we learn and aren't just included to check a box? I think the tokenism part is being questioned here, so if you could take that up.
Yeah, that's an important question because we know cultures have differentials of power over there. There are two ways of doing that. Both are important. One is that we have to strengthen groups. It's not going to happen. I mean, if a group is very weak, and weakness can be of a number of kinds, not just economic, but also cultural. So there must be an empowerment happening, and which is what permits people to be able to even speak. If I feel very powerless, I'm too scared to speak also, or even to have my own thoughts. So there must be empowerment. That's one condition. But that's not sufficient. That's still not sufficient for dialogue. The second is we have to expand the people's understandings of the cultures of dialogue, both on the sides of the powerless and the powerful. We have to work not just on the powerless and empowering the powerless. We have to change cultures of the powerful. So we have to work on both sides for that, very briefly. So it's possible, but you have to work on it on both these things.
Okay, thank you. I hope this answers your question, Kapil. The next one says, how do you think we can create a dialogue that challenges power in educational institutions in today's times?
Right. Yeah, very practical question, an immediate for our immediate existence. Well, we start by learning what is a dialogue. We start by learning, and there's a lot of material, a lot of resources on this. Drop me a mail, I'll send you a lot of resources. We'll start by learning the basics of a dialogue, learning to listen, learning to talk in non-threatening ways, learning to build collectivities and solidarities which have legitimacy, trying to understand what gives the sources of legitimacy, and through that building organization, because it's one thing to speak alone, it's another thing to have groups behind you. So creating legitimacy and learning to have conversations And one has to learn that. I'll repeat that. That is a path. And we have a number of, I work with youth organizations also, and people learn this and find that they are suddenly able to achieve much more than just by going and banging heads with each other.
Next one says, if everything is subjective, then how do we differentiate orthodox from progressive?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Uh, uh, Everything is subjective, but there are also intersubjectivities. We also have people understanding each other. People can understand each other in a basic way, and people can talk more. People can listen more. People can go and try to put themselves in other people's shoes. Actually, go and live there for a while and see. And we find that people will better understanding. We will never have a full understanding, but we can improve understandings. Uh, uh, this does lead us to having, I will not use the term orthodoxies and progressive, that's one position. But people will then find that there are different um, uh, principles now we begin to agree with. One has to ask what are perhaps better ethical principles. And it's possible to have conversations and arrive at better ethical principles. Again, not that everybody will agree with it, but if I'm engaging with dialogue, perhaps we can expand some sharedness of ethical principles. One of amongst the ethical principles which we have, for example, which a lot of people agree with, is everybody should be respected. Now, those who believe in the caste system don't believe in this. Everybody is not to be respected. Certain castes are to be respected. But it is possible to engage with it. It is possible to expand this understanding. And we have a number of ethical principles which we can expand. So it is possible to do that and to move towards that. Can you move with complete certainty? No. But if I'm assuring myself that I'm open, I'm listening, I'm making efforts to see the other point of view, I'm making efforts to share my point of view, help the other person to understand my point of view, then perhaps I'm in a better direction to go. So, but this notion that I have to have certainty is the notion of another culture. It's not sustainable now. I have to approach things with humility and openness.
For that, there is a question by Navdurga. It says, with the monopoly of ideologies and political authority over knowledge, how you think we can create reason within educational institutions?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is happening around the world. It's a challenge everywhere. Academic institutions around the world have been losing credibility, legitimacy, and are being attacked by people who think that these guys are doing nonsense. So first step is try to understand why are they saying this? Why are they saying that we are doing nonsense? Why are they saying we have been corrupted, we have become hollow, we are frauds? Why are they saying that? And I have to use that to try to of course introspect and ask what is wrong within myself, and also try to have a conversation with them, try to help them understand that maybe perhaps this is not nonsense. This is a continuous challenge between legitimacy and the use of coercion. These are the processes. Dialogue is the process of building legitimacy. But there will be people who say, we don't want to listen to you. We just don't, we want our things to prevail. We don't want to listen to you. And that is one of the challenges for dialogue. How does one work over there? How does one build legitimacy for people who don't care for legitimacy? The argument there is that, again, over there, the two things I mentioned earlier, keep trying to find languages, concepts, systems of thought which other people do understand. Let's try to expand on those. And to discourage, and along with that, to discourage the temptation of using power in an irresponsible manner. Increase your own power. Power the danger in power is power does not give legitimacy. Power does not decide who's right. We have to use moral grounds, empirical grounds, the questions of what is the principles of knowledge to talk about legitimacy. But I have to discourage people also from using power arbitrarily. Sometimes, obviously, I may need to strengthen myself also. But the emphasis must always be on what is legitimacy. and having conversations, trying to understand what is legitimacy.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for Professor Madan? Anybody would want to ask their questions on their own? Not really. So, maybe what actually both the speakers have put me in a lot of trouble right now. The challenge of trying to give some kind of final remarks. I don't think I can really do that. But what I'll do is try and bring some of the connecting points from the two presentations. At first glance, I think most of the students here and the other audience members, faculty members, and scholars and other people probably would think that the two presentations are completely different from each other, but they really are not, because the first thing that I noticed was in terms of realizing where do we stand as human beings and as social beings. The first argument that came from Professor Savyasaachi's presentation is how do we really locate ourselves within the larger ecosystem or the larger world, larger universe, and that we are a very minuscule part of it. So if we try and expand our horizons of understanding who we are and where we stand, probably is going to help us have a more buoyant intentionality that was characteristic of the life that had forest as the main ingredient as part of that life, that social life. With the changes that came around, a lot of things changed. We sort of became capsulated, we became compartmentalized, and we forgot how to really think in terms of the relationships which are beyond human communities, or which are beyond machines and mechanization and things like that. Right now, I think he left us with one of the perpetual fear that we have. The more we are thinking about the AI in our lives, is that going to lead to a situation where there is just technology and AI and no human beings anymore? Are we going to have a mind of our own anymore after this? And yes, he made a very clear distinction that the brain and the mind doesn't work together. They're like separate entities, and we need to understand the difference between the two. With Professor Madan taking on from there, I think emphasize the idea of inclusivity, emphasize the idea of dialogue, emphasize for us that imagination and creativity with regard to other perspectives is very important. So we are not looking at just one kind of situated knowledges, but we have to look at the possibility of how these knowledges interact with each other and create spaces where there are none. So that's my sort of 2 cents on the two presentations, that please take away the idea from here that we need to think beyond what we know. We need to understand that there is a possibility of dialogue in different ways, not just with entities, but also people, with our nature, and understanding the possibilities of how these dialogues will create new ethics and new aesthetics. I think that's the larger frame within which these two presentations can be located. On this note, thank you so much, everybody. I hope we are not too late with this session, and we can move on to the next session and I'll hand over it to the organizers. Thank you to both the presenters, Professor Savyasaachi, Professor Madan. It was a pleasure listening to you again. And I hope all the audience members have gained a lot and can think about more than what they know right now. Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Savyasaachi and Professor Amman. It was just wonderful listening to the two of you. And I think for some of us, we'll carry the whole idea about the distinction between the brain and the mind as teachers in particular for much longer. Just one tiny announcement I wanted to make, that the feedback form and the attendance form, both the links have been shared in the chat box. Very important to make this announcement. And I now request Dr. Divakar to please just conclude the session. And thank you once again to the chairperson of the session, the chair of the session, sorry, and to both our distinguished speakers. Yes, I'll hand over it to you, Divakar, sir. Sir, could you please unmute yourself to give the final vote of thanks?
Dr. Dev, please unmute yourself.
So, thank you so much. Yeah, sorry. So thank you so much for this profound discussions. The panel was so profound and richly edifying that they brought up so many issues. And I really thank Professor Savyasaachi for bringing many, the talk was so interesting and edifying. Also, Professor Amman, for bringing so many issues. And thank you so much, sir, for having such a epistemological, richly intellectual thought-provoking talks. And also, I would like to thank Rashi Bhargava for chairing the session. I'd also like to thank all the people, all the volunteers who really helped us to run this session very smooth. So thank you so much, everyone. And it was really very interesting. Thank you so much.
And just one more request. Could I request everyone to also keep their cameras on? Should we proceed with the group photo right now, or just asking?
Nikita, you can take a group photo for this session.
All right. I just request everyone to please turn on their cameras. I am hiding the banner of Equinox, I think. I will be taking one from my screen, and Harshlata, please let me know once you've also taken from your end. Harshlata, could you please unmute yourself? I can't hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just please tell me once you take the photo.
आप ready है screenshot पे तो हाँ बोल दीजिए.
Yes, we're all ready.
Yes,
Please
ma'am, we are ready.
please take the photo.
Ready?
Ma'am, it's done.
All right. Thank you. I'll just turn off my video.
Right. Thank you.
Sign off.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, dear participants. This is an important announcement about the technical session 5. So for this technical session 5, there are 6 oral presentations, oral sessions. Okay. So you have to join the group. There are some 6 breakout rooms yet not open. Please don't try. Okay. So before that, you please rename yourself. Go to the participants and click on your name and rename yourself with the group number. Likewise, group number 1, Dr. Tejan Kumar. So whatever is your name, write the group number before your name, so that I can easily move to your room if you can't go there. Okay. After the opening all the groups, okay, you must have to select that room. Before that, please accept the breakout room permission. Okay. Whenever I will open, it will ask for the access or permission. You please accept this, and then you will show the list of the 6 groups, and then go to your particular room. Okay, you can go there. If you can't, then please let me know or raise your hand. I will move to your group, but must ensure that write the group name before your name. Okay, thank you. Now all groups are open. Please join accordingly.